Hey everyone. Today we're just going to quickly discuss how to build a simple but effective database on Notion. And I'm going to be doing some backtesting in the future. I already do backtesting on TradeZella, but you want to be capturing data on both ends. So this is going to be a simple but effective guide on pretty much how to, number one, build a database on Notion, and number two, pretty much just break down, some components that you would effectively need to capture some of this data. All right, so let's just pretty much get started on the simple idea, and I will transfer us over to Notion after I explain some of these ideas. So the first thing you want to consider is your model, right? Like my trading model. What is my entry criteria? What do I want to see? What are some components that I can build or pretty much construct into this type of almost configuration, right? And so in this particular example, I want to think of those various things. So let's think of components for a second, right? For the sake of this example, let's say that we're using our higher time frame is the equivalent to the 4-hour chart, right? And then our entry time frame is the equivalent to a 15-minute or a 5-minute chart. Now, the important question that we should be asking ourselves here is, what do we want to see here and what do we want to see here, right? We tend to almost start associating repetitive things that happen in the chart. And so it's a very important question to ask yourself after some time in trading, after backtesting, what are some components or what are some variables that we see consistently that I could potentially look to frame as a configuration or as a component as a part of my model. Now, for the sake of the example, I've already built a couple of databases before, so I'm going to keep it relatively simple, but we're going to name these configurations. So I'm going to be using the 4-hour chart as my configuration, and so I'm going to have configuration number A, or letter A, sorry, config B, and then config C, right? And pretty much what these are going to be are swing points, right? I am a big advocate and I use swing points in my everyday trading. I want to build an order block model. I want to be able to capture the order block within the wick, right? I want to be positioned in that potentially, for those of you that know that candle number 2, that candle number 3, etc., right? And so kind of how do I go about this? I start building a configuration, right? So configuration letter A is going to be, for example, let me switch over my pen over here. It's going to be the previous day, 10 o'clock, right? 4-hour candle, then the 2 a.m. candle, and then the 6 a.m. candle. And so what this pretty much means is that 10 p.m. candle is going to be our first candle in the swing, that 2 o'clock is going to be our second candle in the swing, and then that 6 o'clock is going to be our distribution, which is going to be the third candle in the swing. So as you can see, kind of rounding out right there, just very ugly drawing, but you get the idea, right? Configuration B can be the consecutive of this, right? Which is going to be 2 a.m. candle 1, 6 a.m. candle 2, and then candle 3 is going to be 10 a.m. And then a continuation of this would be 6 a.m., 10, and then the 2 p.m., which would be 14. So here I already have 3 configurations, right? I kind of understand already what I would want to see from these configurations. This is going to allow me to be able to place some sort of structure to the data that I'm collecting, right? I need to understand there need to be variables that are consistent. I need to be able to understand I need to be able to apply them. I need to be able to extract some sort of information or data or a statistic that will allow me to apply an edge to my chart, because information without being able to translate it into an edge is pretty much insignificant. So let's start thinking about a couple of other things, and I'll give you guys some good examples here. Let's start thinking about some other things that I would need to track ideally, right? In order to fully grasp what I'm doing here. So if I move over back to my pen, get rid of that board. So now I want to think about maybe my higher time frame arrays, right? What are the most common arrays that I'm going to be entering on the 4-hour chart? So immediately my mind goes from external, internal, OB, and then rejection blocks. So just to give you guys a list, we have 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And so now we can look to attach some sort of information or value into these. I also want to think about, of course, my position, right? Am I long? Am I short? And then I also want to think about my entry timing. So just let this, I also want to think about my entry timing, right? I want to think about, am I entering before or after the 4-hour candle close? So this is, this is an important question that pertains to what I'm doing with my model. So I think what's important now here is that we're going to go ahead and just move over to the Notion page. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. I'm going to bring up a blank page, and we're going to start from the very, very beginning. We're going to start from the scratch. So here is a blank page, right? And what you're going to want to go ahead and do is name it. So I'm going to name this model study number 1 because I already have a model study, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to include a page. So I'm going to do /page, right? And then this new page is going to be the data collection. And this is going to be a table. Whoops, sorry. Database, there we go. Go ahead and do an empty database. I apologize. And then collection. And then this can just be whatever you want to name it, right? And then what we're going to come and do is change the name to trade number. And this is going to be where we're going to be inputting all of our trade information. And I'm going to come back to this in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to model study here. I already have my page where I can go in and place my information. What I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to do /table, and I'm going to do table view. Now I have a small table pulled up. I'm going to go ahead and do the full width here so it's easier to see, right? And I want to do this for a couple of tables because I'm going to be gathering multiple databases, right? So that's table 1, that's table 2. Create maybe another table here, table view database, right? So now I have 3 tables, and in these tables, I'm going to be looking to build a relationship between these tables and the collection page, which is where I want to be putting all of my information in. So in this new table here, I'm going to name this the configuration. I can change this to type, and I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to say config A, add a new page, config B, add a new page, config C. Right? Those are my configurations. What else did we discuss? We discussed the position. So now I want to see long, short. And then what else did we discuss? We discussed the higher time frame array. So I can go ahead and change this to array. I'm going to change this to direction. And then I'm just going to change that, leave all of these logos the same because they're pretty much insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So let me just go ahead and close this. There we go. Okay. And so now we have something that looks a little bit like this. And I'm going to go ahead and here, I'm going to name a few. We can just do internal. We can do external. And then we can do an order block for the sake of having a bit more examples. So now what we have is basically the foundation for a simple dashboard, right? We have our initial page here named model study. It has 1, 2, and 3 tables. And then we have our collection page, which is going to include all of the data. Now, when building out the collection page, there's a lot of information that we can track, but I'm going to simplify this into a couple of really, really simple things. So we're just going to come over here and we're going to move over to add, right? So a new property, and I'm going to do number. This number is going to be my risk. So that's going to be my risk. I'm going to go ahead and add another number, and that's going to be my reward. Now later we can obviously build a formula for risk to reward, but for the sake of this, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it risk, reward, right? And so now whenever I come in, I can do trade 1, right? Or I can do trade 2. And just to clarify, I'm going to go ahead and add a very simple description here. The measurements, it's going to be risk, reward, and these are going to be in ticks. So I want to just add here in my description kind of what am I using for the measurement, right? And so I'm going to be using ticks, and the asset is mainly going to be, in this example, it's going to be ES. If it's NQ, then obviously you want to specify that, right? So now there are a couple of variables here. There are a couple of things that I'm keeping track of. I'm keeping track of my risk, and I'm also keeping track of my reward. Now this is the part where it gets interesting, right? Oh, let me go back and actually add this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a checkbox, right? And the checkbox is pretty much just going to specify whether that was a win or a loss. So if it's a win equals check box, right? So now we know my measurements are in ticks, my win is equal to the checkbox, and then my asset is ES. So if it's a win, I'll come in, I'll put in win or loss. My risk, for example, on the last trade can be 14 ticks, and my reward can be 45 ticks. So what I can do here is I can easily go here, I can do formula and pretty much edit formula, and then do risk, risk, there we go. Sorry, let me just finish this real quick. Edit formula. And there we go. That should be the correct. So now it's going to display, and we can change the number format. It can be number with commas. It can be whatever you would like it to be, but I'm not going to get into. There we go. That kind of clears it up a little bit better. But as you can see, my risk was 14 here, so I'm risking 14 ticks to make 45. So my formula is going to give me that reward, or that risk to reward, which I can then name the risk to reward. Formula is going to give me 3.2. Obviously, if I'm risking 14 ticks to make 28 ticks, that's going to give me a risk to reward of 2, right? And that's going to be my win loss. So this is the important part that I need you to pay attention. I want to bring data, and I want to be able to tell how much was my risk reward on this configuration A, right? And just to specify again, configuration A is going to be from 10 p.m., the swing formation from 10 p.m. So we'll kind of specify that here. So swing formation, right? Candle 1 is going to be 22, so that hour 22. Candle 2 is going to be 02, which is 2 in the morning, and then candle 3 is going to be 06, which is 6 in the morning. So now I know that the swing formation is the following, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy that over into the other pages. Whoops. But what I am going to do is I'm going to change these, obviously. So this is going to be 002, this is going to be 6, and then this is going to be 10 in the morning Eastern time, right? And then similarly here, instead of it starting there, it's going to start at 06. Candle number 2 is going to be 10, and then candle number 3 is going to be 14, which is 2 p.m. Eastern time. So also important to clarify, swing formations are in EST, right? So UTC, I believe UTC 4 or 5, UTC 4, I think. Anyways, so now it's a matter of how can I break down my data? How can I add a relation to these pages that makes it a little bit easier? So pay attention, because this is important. So if I go over to the addition button and I click relation, I'm able to add a relation between two pages. So I look up collection, which is the name of the page, right? Collection OB model right here. And it's going to show me model study 1. What I want to do is no limit and then two-way relation, and then I want to add the relation, and that's going to allow me to bring data from this page to here and from this table to this page. So now if I go over to the collection configuration, I can go ahead and attach a configuration to this trade. So let's say hypothetically trade number 1 happened to be configuration number B, or configuration letter B, which happens to be also configuration B is candle 2, which is 6, so 02, 06, 10. So 6 a.m. sweeps the 2 a.m. high or low, and then 10 a.m. is our distribution, right? Whoops. And then let's say hypothetically that trade number 2 is configuration A, right? And so now what I can do is I can slowly just input all of that information, right? So if I took a trade in my back testing, my risk, I put in my risk, I put in my reward. I get my risk to reward already, and then I get a configuration. I'm able to select that configuration. So I go back to the model study, and what I can do here, and this is the interesting part, right? I can go here at addition, right? New property, and I can do roll up. Now with the roll up, what the roll up is going to be able to do is you're going to be able to click a relation, which you already have. So you have a connection to the page, to the main page, which is your quote unquote database, right? And then what you can do is select a property within that page. So let's say I wanted to see the risk, right? And I wanted to show, I can select multiple calculations here, right? But I can show average. So now what's going to happen is this is going to be my average, sorry if I remember correctly, my average risk. So now, and I can go ahead and hide this. I don't need to see this, right? Because that's going to make the connections. But now what I can see is for my configuration A and my configuration B, what is my average risk? So now obviously if I add a new trade, let's say trade number 2 or trade number 3, and let's say I add trade number 4, I have 2 more trades, right? My risk was 30 and my risk was 24 and my reward was 10. And my reward here on this one was 50, right? And so this is obviously a loss, that's a win. Now I have a risk reward of 0.3 and 2.1 for trade number 3 and trade number 4 respectively. If I go ahead and add configuration A and configuration A, let's say both of those trades were configuration A, and I go back to model study, it's going to tell me now the average risk in ticks of what that configuration. So now what can we do with that information, right? It's like, am I taking on more risk on average historically for a model that forms on configuration A, or am I taking on more risk for a model that's forming on configuration B? And sorry, I don't mean A or B. So now let's go back and add the rest of the tables, right? So come back here, whoops, go back to model study, add a new property, do relation, just so it kind of gets into your guys' brain. The name of the page is collection OB model. This is going to be a two-way relation, and we're going to have no limit. I'm going to go ahead and add that relation, and as you can see now, what pops up is the position. So now I can add, was this a long? Was this a long? Was this a short? Was this a short? Right? Go back. Same thing here. New property, relation, collection, no limit, two-way relation, add relation. And now I'm able to attach whether this was an internal, an external, or an order block, or whatever array that you're looking to name. And now what I can do is I can attach these values or calculations, specific calculations that I want to see to all of these. So I can go ahead and hide this, hide that in view, hide that in view. And I can add, let's say hypothetically, again, new property, roll up, select the relation there. And then what I want to do is select what I would want to see. So let's say I want to see the win rate. So I click on WL, which is my win rate, and then I show count or percent, and then the percent checked. So this is telling me that I have a 100% win rate on my longs and a 0% win rate on my shorts, which is true. I have 3 long trades that are winners, and the one losing trade was a short. Now, let's say on the higher time frame arrays, I want to see similar. I go here, new property, roll up, relation, OB model, target property, win, and then I want to see percent checked. So I have a 100% win rate on internal and external and a 50% win rate on my order block. Now what you can also do, so you can just rename this win rate, rename this win rate, and let's say I want to get a little bit more granular. I want to understand more. Let's say same thing, roll up, select your value or your relation. Target property is going to be my reward. And I want to know on average how much my reward is for my long positions and my shorts. So I can go to more options. I can go to average, and it's going to show me that on my longs, I have a 41 tick average, right? And on my shorts, I have a reward. So now I know that on average, my shorts give me 10 ticks of reward, and on average, my longs give me 41 ticks of reward, which means that I'm definitely leaning more towards that long bias. I have my trades for my long bias are better. They give me more reward. And so what you can do is you can pair multiple data sets and multiple data interpretations to give a further understanding. And so just a really, really simple but a very effective way to collect. And so you go over to your TradeZilla, you backtest, you collect all of this information, and as time goes on, you'll be able to determine what configuration is best, where do I risk the most, what kind of position do I risk the most, where do I have a better win rate, and what higher time frame array benefits me the most. And I can obviously also see all of this information plus the average reward plus the average risk, which will then help you make better data-driven decisions. And yeah, that's pretty much how you build a very simple but effective database and table relation on Notion.